Petal 4, Breaking Open Again. Angel Bob. Someone else that helped me to get to know myself better was another astrologer, Bob Cook. I met Bob back in the beginning of my journey when I was a newbie to all this stuff. I went yearly for a reading. I wanted to know why every time I told someone who was into astrology that I was a Pisces Sun, Scorpio Moon, they cringed. While I believe in the science of astrology, I take it with a grain of salt. Astrological forces have an influence over our lives, whether we believe in it or not, but free will still reigns supreme. Ultimately, we are the creator of our reality and our lives, but astrology is a wonderful self-help tool. One of the things Bob made me aware of was that I had a gift of attracting wolves in sheep clothing. So whenever I met someone, he told me to call him with his date of birth. I felt like I was cheating in a way, but I listened to Bob because I didn't have much luck in the dating arena. For example, the last date I went on, my last to this day, was with a guy who had tattooed sleeves on both arms. Since I realized we didn't have much in common in the first 60 seconds we were together after he asked me what television shows I watched and I didn't watch TV, I asked him what his tattoos meant. His left arm was covered in skulls and crossbones, which was a fashion fad at the time, so I didn't think much of it. When he responded, there was a time in my life when I had a pact with the devil. I started to get a little freaked out and covertly began to inch away from him. I went to his other tattooed arm thinking this arm has got to be better, asking him what it meant. He said, "You don't know what misanthropy means? Look it up on your phone." So I did, and as I read the definition of misanthropy, hatred for the human species, I continued to inch away from him even more, hoping he wouldn't notice the fear that was building inside, praying he was not some serial killer, and silently requesting the protection of my Archangel Michael. I excused myself to the bathroom. I knew I had to get away from this guy fast. Not the best taste in men. Yeah, I needed Bob. Bob was right on the money every single time, too, about every guy I met. Even when I didn't want to believe him. It was never was good news either. Until one day I called Bob, gave him a date of birth, and Bob asked me, "Where did you meet him?" This was surprising. He never asked me any questions. It was usually, "You can date him, but being with him is like watching the grass grow," or "He's good for a fling," or "The sex would be good, but don't expect him to commit to anything long term." You get the picture. Finally, after all these years, Bob gave me the thumbs up. This was historic. Dreams finally coming true. I decided to go for it, and go for it did I ever. I ended up getting married to him, getting divorced, and crawling back to Bob with my heart shattered in my hands a year later, totally devastated. When Bob asked me what happened, I told him, "You gave me the thumbs up." He replied, "I didn't tell you to marry him." And the learning continues. Of course, I didn't marry my husband because Bob gave me the thumbs up. We were soulmates, and we fell madly in love with each other. It didn't hurt having the approval from Bob either, I have to admit. I met my husband, I will call him soulmate number 3, volunteering at a young men's group home on Long Island. He was a counselor there, and I was teaching yoga to the young men in recovery. In the summers, he went to California to fight forest fires. The summer we met, he never used his plane ticket and made it to California. We spent the summer at the beach falling in love. I felt sure and safe that this was the person I could let my guard down with and trust. The first person at 38 years of age that I opened up to and let in. Part of the reason was because soulmate number 3 was a strict practicing Catholic. He was actually contemplating becoming a priest right before he met me. I changed his mind pretty quickly. Wink, wink. He was probably one of the last men walking on the planet at 37 that still believed in being with only one woman for his entire life. He was waiting to meet his bride. I honored his request because I didn't pressure him to consummate the relationship, and we were deeply in love. He told me we were married on a soul level and wanted to give himself to me. So give himself to me he did, and we got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but abortion was not an option for him, being Catholic. We were madly in love, and I always wanted another child, so we decided to make a family. We got married in Town Hall on February 28th, 2008. This was one of the happiest times in my life. I remember feeling like I finally belonged somewhere, with a man who loved me and would never leave me. The family I always dreamed about was coming true. It was so nice to be someone's wife at last. Soulmate number 3 was also the first relationship where I felt comfortable and safe enough to experience an orgasm. I had problems down there. No, not down there, but up in my head. When I consulted my gynecologist about my non-orgasmic life, he did a thorough examination, which I passed with flying colors, and then gave me a number to a sex therapist. The issue wasn't my female body parts, thank God. The issue was in my head, and fixable. My non-orgasmic life was also fueled by inappropriate sexual experiences I had when I was 9 and again when I was a teenager. It was something I never talked about but knew it affected me. The head and the heart and the vagina are all connected, I've come to realize. They say the largest female sex organ is the brain, and I concur. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I panicked and began exercising like crazy. I started bleeding a lot but continued to work. I'm not sure what propelled me to ignore my body and these signs. I should have been home resting with my feet up. Shortly after, I had a miscarriage. Even though I always wanted another baby, part of me didn't feel ready. I must have known something was off deep down. Still, I was emotionally distraught and having conflicting emotions. Even though my doctor tried to convince me that it wasn't my fault, I felt responsible and guilty. One of my biggest dreams was to be in love in a healthy relationship and bring a child into the world. I felt like this was my last chance at 38 years old to have another baby, and I blew it. All cried out. Shortly after we lost our baby, we went to India together for a month to study and practice yoga. As soon as we got there, we looked at each other and said, "What happened?" India tends to do that to you. It brings up all your shit to detox, then leaves you stripped down and spiritually naked to bare your soul. There's no hiding your shit in India. Everyone we met thought we were on our honeymoon. They had no idea, and either did I. It was just the opposite, the beginning of our decline. About 2 weeks after we returned from our trip to India, I walked into our bedroom to find his things gone. The rug was pulled out from under me again. Blindsided and feeling total abandonment, I went spiraling down. I drowned in my tears as I cried every day for a year straight, and I'm not exaggerating. The only time I had a little bit of reprieve from my heartache and misery was when I was teaching yoga. I would cry in my car driving to the studio, get myself together in the parking lot, blow my nose, wipe the tears away, and remind myself that I don't know who's going to be in class and what they are going through, and that I have to be the one to bring healing and light and love to the class. So I would put my problems and heartache to the side for the time being and go in and be a channel for yoga to flow. Sometimes the grief would be overwhelming and I would end up crying softly while my students were in Shavasana, or the last final relaxation. As painful as this was, at the time I didn't realize how powerful this practice was for me. It showed me that when I wasn't making it all about me, I felt relief. It taught me a lot about being selfless and being a conduit for God's love to flow through me. I taught my best classes when I was vulnerable and pain. Even so, after class, I went right back to the same mental and emotional torture, questioning why, how, why, how? How could I let this happen again? I thought, if I can make a 38-year-old virgin Catholic run away and divorce me, I must be a wreck still. I had a lot of work to do, even after 7 years of consistent introspection and healing. Why? That one little word can really make us stuck. Sometimes we don't know why, especially when it involves another person. Sometimes we just have to accept without knowing why. I was so depressed during this time of separation with soulmate number 3. My good friend said to me that I was lucky I could sleep, as she was going through woman life changes and having issues with sleep. I thought to myself, not really lucky. The reason I'm going to bed at 7 p.m. and sleeping so much is because it's the closest thing to dying to me. When I spoke with my intuitive friend who can see chakras, she said compassionately, "Oh, honey," and told me my heart looked like someone took a shotgun and blasted a hole right through it. It was then, when I was lying in bed one night, I heard God's voice for the second time. "You have so much love inside of you." I wasn't sure what that meant exactly and how it could help me not feel so hopeless and depressed, but it was a silver lining that helped me get back up out of bed. Fire. So when I went crawling back to Bob with my heart in my hands, he very tenderly began to explain some things to me, which helped me to see what happened. It made so much sense. In an effort to keep as much private as possible, I will not share what Bob told me about soulmate number 3 and our relationship. I will only share what he told me about myself. While he concurred that I had a lot of anger, or fire as he called it, inside of me, he also showed me the positive side to it. He told me I can turn that anger into something positive. He showed me that the benefit of being a deep person was that I can go where most people won't go, and from that dark despair and sadness I can bring back a pearl of wisdom or a sign of beauty and light and hope for the world to see. He helped me to look at what I always deemed as imperfection and flaws as strength. I gravitated to yoga and meditation because I'm very spiritual in nature. That's what the water sign in me, Neptune, is. But I can also go down to the valley where there's mud and blood and darkness. That's the fire in me, Pluto. According to Bob, Pluto eats Neptune for breakfast. He continued, I came into this lifetime to learn about myself through my relationships with men mostly, but they would usually end with Pluto blowing them up. Great, I'm thinking, this sucks. Yup, I can see that in every one of my relationships. On a more positive note, he did say that I will find real, lasting, true love, but later in life. Okay, I can deal with that. Thank God I won't be alone my whole life. He said that I needed a partner who can walk through the fire with me, not shrink or run away from it. I understand that now. I also understand that it doesn't give me the right to take my fury out on another person. That is where I have to do the work and control my intense emotions. Talk about a paradigm shift. I never thought of myself like that. I always thought I was angry and defective. Bob showed me the beauty and grace in the so-called imperfection. Bob was another angel in my life. This so-called relationship disaster with soulmate number 3 actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise, bearing many gifts. I just needed to get through the emotional pain and heartbreak of it first to see them. After 2 years of grieving and a lot of spiritual counseling and work on myself, I began to see the light again.